The episode opens with Meredith Grey explaining that hospitals can feel a lot like battlefields. In war, there's a place called no man's land, the dangerous ground between two sides where soldiers are most exposed. According to Meredith, that's exactly what being a doctor feels like. Every day they stand between life and death, hope and despair, never knowing which side a patient will fall on. The first major case of the day arrives when a construction worker is rushed into the emergency room with a shocking injury. Several large nails are embedded in his head. The man was using a nail gun when the accident happened, and somehow multiple nails fired directly into his skull. Despite the terrifying injury, he's still conscious and able to talk. X-rays confirm the unbelievable situation. Multiple nails are lodged dangerously close to critical parts of the brain. The case immediately becomes a neurosurgical emergency, placing it under the supervision of Derek Shepard. Meredith begins noticing something unusual in the patient's behavior. She asked the wife if she noticed anything unusual with his husband. The wife recalls that husband had been having really bad headaches lately, and the accident wasn't his first fall. She explains that before the accident, he wasn't feeling right. Something was off, but they didn't think it was serious. Meredith starts to suspect that the patient may also have a brain tumor and brings the concern to Derek. Derek advises Meredith to first focus on the operation of removing the nails, instead of suggesting undiagnosed illnesses because removing the nails is already a risky procedure. Meanwhile, across the hospital, Cristina Yang is dealing with a very different kind of case. She's assigned to assist with Nurse Fallon, an elderly former nurse who once worked at Seattle Grace years earlier. Nurse Fallon is suffering from severe pancreatic disease. The surgical team begins discussing the possibility of performing a Whipple procedure, one of the most complex and dangerous operations in medicine. The Whipple involves removing part of the pancreas along with portions of the digestive system. It's a massive surgery that can last many hours and requires an incredibly skilled team. Cristina is immediately fascinated. For an ambitious intern like her, assisting in a Whipple surgery would be a huge opportunity. But as the doctors evaluate Fallon's condition, the mood in the room begins to shift. Fallon is extremely weak. Even if the surgery is technically successful, she might not survive the recovery. The surgeons debate whether the operation would truly help her or simply prolong her suffering. Cristina struggles with the idea that sometimes the best medical decision might be not to operate at all. Elsewhere in the hospital, Izzie Stevens faces a personal challenge of her own. One of her patients recognizes her from a lingerie advertisement she once posed for. Before attending medical school, Izzie worked as a model to pay her tuition. But now that past has followed her into the hospital. Instead of seeing her as a doctor, the patient sees her as the model from the magazine. The situation escalates to the point where the patient refuses to have Izzie as his doctor at all. For Izzie, it's more than just rejection, it's humiliation. She approaches Miranda Bailey and asks to be taken off the case. Izzie admits that she paid her way through school by modeling, and now those choices are being used against her. She feels like no matter how hard she works, people will only ever see her past, not the doctor she's trying to become. Bailey listens, but instead of offering sympathy, she responds with firm resolve. She refuses to let Izzie step away. Bailey reminds her that she earned her place in that hospital, and no patient has the right to take that away from her. Walking away won't solve anything. It will only reinforce the doubt. If Izzie wants to be taken seriously, she has to stand her ground and prove it through her work. To make matters worse, Alex Karev begins mocking her about it. He jokes about the photos in front of the other interns, implying that her modeling career somehow makes her less serious as a doctor. At first, Izzie tries to ignore him, but eventually, she confronts him directly. She reminds Alex that those photos helped pay for her education, and that while he struggles with student loans, she is financially free. She worked incredibly hard to become a doctor, and her past doesn't change that. Her confrontation leaves Alex briefly speechless. Determined not to let the patient's opinion define her, she makes it clear that her past has nothing to do with her abilities in the present. She reminds him that she is a trained doctor, fully capable of treating him, whether he chooses to respect her or not. Back in the operating room, Derek begins the delicate procedure to remove the nails from the patient's skull. The surgical team works carefully as Derek extracts each nail one by one. Every movement requires precision. The nails are dangerously close to vital areas of the brain, and one wrong move could cause irreversible damage. Meredith watches closely, assisting where she can. The tension in the room is intense as the final nail is finally removed. The operation is a success. The patient survives the nail injuries. But the question of the tumor still remains. After the successful operation, Derek requested for an MRI to confirm Meredith's suspicion. At first, it was just a suspicion, something easy to overlook in the chaos of the nail injuries. But now, with the nails removed and the images clearer, it becomes harder to ignore. The MRI confirms it. There's a tumor. Derek approaches the patient's wife and carefully tells her what they discovered on the scan. Derek explains that there may be another problem, a tumor in his brain. The wife is stunned. Now she must make an impossible decision. Meredith gently explains that removing the tumor could potentially save his life in the long run, but it also carries significant risks. The surgery could damage parts of his brain and change the person he is. In other words, the operation might save him, but he might not be the same loving husband she knows. Meanwhile, Cristina continues spending time with Nurse Fallon and begins to understand her perspective. As a nurse who spent decades caring for patients, Fallon knows exactly what a Whipple procedure would mean, and ultimately, she makes her decision. Instead of undergoing the risky surgery, Fallon chooses not to operate. She would rather spend the time she has left peacefully than endure a painful and uncertain recovery. For Cristina, the decision is difficult to accept. She entered medicine believing that surgery could fix almost anything. But Nurse Fallon reminds her that sometimes the most compassionate choice is letting nature take its course. As the day ends, Meredith reflects once again on the idea of no man's land. Doctors constantly stand in the middle of impossible choices. Between saving a life and risking everything. Between hope and reality. For the interns at Seattle Grace Hospital, learning to survive in that uncertain space is part of becoming a doctor, and each day on this battlefield brings new challenges they never expected. Thank you for watching. Subscribe for more movie recaps.